Hope everyone's doing pretty well. This morning, I'm pleased to be joined by Jack Lundin, who's currently the CEO of Lundin Mining. Just a little bit of background about me. Run a long-short equity hedge fund that focuses on energy, materials, and industrials. Been investing in I'd love to say that a Lundin company was the first mining firm I invested in, but actually the first mining firm I invested in was Freeport-McMoRan. The second, though, was a Lundin diamond miner by the name of Lucara, which still exists and is still a publicly traded company. So I have a long history of following the family and the companies that they have started and spun off, and they've been wonderfully successful at being natural resource investors, both energy and mining, for 3 generations now. Jack is part of the 3rd generation. And the discussion today is sort of going to focus on Lundin Mining, which, as I said, he's now the CEO on, and which my fund, Massif Capital, just published a fairly large sort of 2-part, 40-page in-depth report on. And it's a very exciting, interesting copper opportunity that's got real legs, and at least in my mind is something you can buy for the long term, if you will. So I think maybe we'll just get started by asking Jack to sort of introduce himself and maybe give us his background and sort of how he came up through the business, because it is a family business, if you will, and how he ended up as CEO now, and how he works with some of his brothers who are also in the businesses. Sort of just start with a general sort of high-level overview like that.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks so much, Will, for inviting me on this platform, and it's a pleasure to be here to present the Lundin Group, specifically Lundin Mining, my background with the business, and to answer any questions that the audience may have. But as you mentioned, my name is Jack Lundin. I'm currently president and CEO of Lundin Mining, also chairman of Lundin Gold, so 3rd generation in the business. The Lundin Group of companies today comprises of 10 publicly traded companies across the resource sector, so base metals, precious metals, oil and gas, and renewable energy. And as you mentioned, with Lucara Diamonds, we also have a diamond mine that we're mining in Botswana. And we're all collectively brought together as well through the support of the Lundin Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that helps us really plan for investment that we make into an area of influence that has a resource that we're looking at developing and ultimately operating. And so I think that that's something that's a key differentiator for the Lundin Group, is the Lundin Foundation. Little bit of background on myself. So I was born into the business, started out working summer jobs in mainly field exploration, kind of early stage projects, and then went to university. I got a business degree and then a mining engineering degree as well. But I worked on the oil and gas side with Lundin Petroleum in my earlier years, and then moved over to the mining side in 2015, and in 2016 started working with Lundin Gold, where we developed the Fruta del Norte high-grade gold project in southern Ecuador. And so that really has been a very successful campaign for the Lundin Group through this investment in Lundin Gold. We built Fruta del Norte from scratch. We built it on time, on budget, and now that company went from around a $240 million market cap to I think it's around 26 billion Canadian, 27 billion Canadian today. Really through just finding an asset that was world-class in nature, looking at building out the capacity in the area of influence, so making an investment for the long term, not just for the company but for the people that are in the area, forming a good partnership and alliance with the host nation, Ecuador, and getting fiscal stability, and then putting the team in place and going about building a world-class deposit and operating it to the highest standard. And that's really the secret sauce, I would say, for the Lundin Group. Is we go out in the world, we look for resources that can deliver returns in the up and downturn of our business. It's a very cyclical business that we're in the resource sector. So we go after assets that can deliver returns in all cycles. And then we look at doing it by building capacity in the local area of influence. And then from there, we look to kind of repeat that model. That's why we have 10 companies instead of one. We want to have a board and management team focused on delivering a specific strategy for that specific company. It allows us to act with entrepreneurial spirit and act with agility. And that's really how we maximize value in the group.
That's great, Jack. Thanks for that introduction. And just remind me, you've got three brothers. Two of them are directly in the business alongside you, correct? And one of them, I think your eldest brother manages the family office or something. Is that roughly accurate?
Yeah, so third generation being in the business, I work together with two of my three brothers. So Adam Lundin, who's currently the chairman of Lundin Mining and sits on the board of a lot of the other Lundin Group mining companies. And then William Lundin, my other brother, he's CEO of International Petroleum Corp, which is operated out of Geneva. And my oldest brother, Harry, he has his own investment fund, which focuses on investments in the resource sector, but outside of the group. So really, the way in which the group is structured today, we have our mining companies. I think 7 of them today are operated out of Vancouver, where I am here. Vancouver is the headquarters for our mining companies. And then for the energy businesses, we have three companies, 2 oil and gas and 1 renewable, based in Geneva, Switzerland. And that's where my brother Will is based. And so having 2 effective corporate hubs, one in Canada, one in Switzerland, it allows us to, focus on, being more in the field and spending time kind of where the assets are located. And that's kind of how we've structured the business over the last several years.
So in the report that I wrote on Lundin, I sort of described you guys as having gone through a bit of a transition over the last 5 years, really revamped from a mid-tier multi-metal firm into a very focused, concentrated copper company, all with the idea, it seemed in my mind, and you tell me if I'm right, of setting the business up to build what is a world-class asset in the Vicuna district. Do you find that characterization sort of accurate?
Yeah, so in 2022, I joined from being a board member of Lundin Mining into the management team, where I became president for 1 year, and now I'm coming up on my 2nd year of being president and CEO of Lundin Mining. And in that period, we have gone through a significant transformation for the company. So I talked a little bit about my history with Lundin Gold, which I would consider to be our flagship precious metals company. Will running IPC, which is our flagship oil and gas business out of Geneva, but our flagship base metals company and really, one of the companies in the copper sector that has the largest growth pipeline for copper production growth is Lundin Mining. And over the last 24 to 36 months, we've really been focusing on optimizing our portfolio, streamlining our business, and structuring ourselves in a way where we can go and really chase growth in copper. We believe fundamentally that the commodity of copper is the place to be. We see that demand growth is growing across kind of all different drivers. So traditional methods, electrification, and now with artificial intelligence and data centers that are required to process massive amounts of data every second. We see that there's a lot of demand growing in this space, and we also understand the supply side very well, being invested in this business for over 31 years with Lundin Mining and the other companies that we have in the group. So today, Lundin Mining, we went from a 6 operation company to a 4 operation company. We sold our European assets. We now have 3 copper mines in South America, 1 nickel mine in the United States. And we've got this growth project called the Vicuna project, which on January 15th of this year, we formed a partnership with BHP, whereby we are going to be looking at developing what's considered to be the largest undeveloped copper, gold, silver district in the world today. So Lundin Mining, a company of our size, to have 50% ownership of a significant growth opportunity like this is quite unique. But I think also what's really important to note is we base our business off of our existing operations. So in addition to streamlining our portfolio, the focus really became on delivering on what we say we're going to do with our existing 4 mines. So setting production targets that are achievable, setting cost targets that are achievable, and really showing the market that we can be seen as a reliable producer in a sector where there's been a lot of supply disruptions, operational challenges. 9 of our 11 peer groups have struggled to meet their production targets this year because of geotech issues, weather events, community disruptions, what have you. So Lundin Mining today, streamlined portfolio, great asset base that we're operating from today, and significant growth that will put us into, today we're a top 25 copper producer. By the time we get into full swing production in Vicuna in the early 2030s, we should be a top 10 copper producer globally.
And obviously, we're going to talk about Vicuna, but I thought maybe we'd just touch on a couple of the other assets before diving in. And you guys were recently in the news with a Supreme Court case in Canada and your Candelaria asset. And you had some issues there in 2017, 2018, obviously before your time with rock wall slide and things of that nature. But I'm just sort of curious, when this Supreme Court case decision came through, allowing, I guess, a case of a group of investors to sue you guys for delivery of information late. How serious is that case, and how much of your time is that type of thing consuming right now?
Yeah, so we're taking that obviously very seriously. In 2017, there was a pit wall failure in the Candelaria pit, which is a mine that we acquired in 2014 from Freeport. We've been operating that mine with 80% ownership ever since, and it's our largest mining operation in terms of copper production output. And so it's a very important operation for us today, and will continue to be going forward in the future. And so this Supreme Court decision basically came out a couple of weeks ago, and it identifies a class action that is being brought towards the company on issue with disclosing information in a timely manner. And so we're working through kind of the ruling from the Supreme Court, and understanding that this is something that could be moving forward into either a decision for the company to proceed into the court, or look at a settlement. For us, we will take the advice and work with our legal team to determine what the best route is forward. But this is something that has been going on for 8 years, and we'll continue to follow it. It's not taking a significant amount of my time, but we are obviously ensuring that we're following the right process. And I believe that in the near term, we'll hopefully be able to conclude this and move forward. But for us, it's just really important that we continue to operate all of our mines at the highest standards. We've seen geotechnical incidents occurring across the sector. Mining is definitely a challenging business to be in, and we got to make sure that we uphold the best standards in our company, both in terms of how we communicate what we're doing at our business, and ensuring that we've got the right critical controls in place to hopefully mitigate any potential issues that can occur at a mining operation. So I feel very confident that we'll conclude this, and we'll be able to continue moving forward. We are fully insured as a business, and so it's not something that we see as a big financial risk for Lundin Mining. However, we obviously have to go through the process, and hopefully we'll see a conclusion soon.
And obviously part of achieving that, sort of running the mines as effectively as possible is labor is obviously a critical component of that. And there always seems like there's a shortage of good labor in mining. Now the Candelaria deposit, if I'm if I'm right, I think next year you guys have to start negotiations with the unions down there about, their next contract. What, how's your relationship with the unions down there? What do you have concerns about it, and have they voiced concerns about the new sort of plan for the mine, which for those who don't know, there was an extension planned, and now you guys have figured out ways to effectively achieve the same result with less capital. Do the unions have concern about that? What's your relationship with them like?
So in the Chilean mining sector, a large portion of the workforce will be working under various unions throughout the operation. This coming year in 2026, we'll be looking to renew our collective bargaining agreement with the 5 unions that exist at Candelaria. Last year at Caserones, we were able to successfully renegotiate and reset the collective bargaining agreement at that operation, which is also in the Atacama region, about 150 kilometers away from Candelaria. And so, we go through this process every 3 years. So we've done it a number of times now. I would say that the relationship amongst the union leaders and the workforce is strong, and I think continues to get stronger based on how Lundin Mining has been running in the last several years. Specifically for us, the way in which we run our mines today, we focus on having a large presence from the executive team and from management here at the Vancouver office, having cohesion between site and corporate, and seeing us all as a one team kind of operator is key. And I think when you look at the results of Lundin Mining over the last 2 to 3 years, this year we're coming up on what should be, we've got just over kind of 2 weeks left in the year, and we should be hitting our production and cost guidance for the 3rd year in a row, which I think shows that there's good alignment between the corporate and site teams on the targets that we're setting and the performance that we're hitting. So we will go through this process. I feel very confident as well that we'll be able to successfully agree on terms that provide a win-win scenario for the workforce and for the organization. And we'll treat it with the values that we have in the organization. And I feel like next year we'll be in good shape at Candelaria.
And so how much? I mean, you talk about everyone being linked up and corporate and the individual mine teams knowing that you're all on one team. How much time are you spending and sort of the C-suite spending on site at your different projects?
I would say that probably once a month I'm at one of our operations. We have, as I mentioned, 4 different sites, and so there's a balance to be stricken between not going there and kind of every time a corporate team member goes, we try to minimize the distraction, but obviously there is an impact. And so, we go there with a purpose. We focus on maybe one of the different areas of the operation. We, focus on reviewing kind of how we're trending and tracking towards our budget. We have a very robust kind of planning cycle that is a 12-month rolling cycle, starting with updating our resource every year. That goes into our reserve and mine planning, and then those generate physicals that we build our budgets off of. And so depending the time of year that we go to the sites, we're kind of reviewing how that process is going. And then also very important for us is just having that those visible interactions, going to one of the areas of the work sites and having a conversation with some of the crews, seeing and understanding kind of what their challenges and opportunities that they're facing, and just trying to provide some some information on what we're looking at from our view and where the organization is heading, and giving insights on what's being done at other operations. I think the strength of having multiple operations is you can share knowledge, and sometimes we can bring specific skill sets from one operation to another to look at improving different areas of the business. So we've got this kind of program that we've implemented that we call Full Potential, where we look at different areas of the mining cycle and see, are there areas that we can take lessons learned from one site and apply to another. And so when we're traveling to the sites, we try and share that knowledge and get feedback, and always look at course correcting and improving how we interact with the sites. But it's this balance between going to the mine sites, going to the different regional offices that we have, spending time marketing, doing events like this, and then informing the board every quarter on how we're tracking towards our budget. So it's kind of it sounds like it's a heavy schedule, and it is, but if you have a calendar that you can plan out, 12 months in advance, then you'd be surprised with the amount of things you can do in a year.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And so, we've got three mines, three operations in South America, and then we've got the Eagle mine in the US. Eagle, I think 2027 is sort of end of life of mine. You guys are sort of planning for that, but you also, cut a deal with Talon earlier this year for their Boulder Dash project. I'm curious, there's a fairly aggressive, I think 30,000 meter drill program. How aggressively are you guys going to pursue that project? And, how do you balance sort of keeping Eagle, I guess, up and running to maybe support that in some way, shape, or form, and sort of closing it down? And how are you guys thinking about that site?
Yeah, great question. So, all of our three LATAM operations, so one copper gold mine in Brazil called Chapada, and then we talked about Candelaria and Caserones, which are in the Atacama region in Chile. So all of these operations have, multi-decade mine life, long life assets that allows us to plan for the long term and really put, key investments that will see us either, maintain or grow production and find areas to reduce costs and thereby improve the margins for the long term at our three Latin American sites. Eagle is a little bit different in that we're running to the end of the mine life. However, the team there is excellent. We've found areas to cut costs significantly. Even in a depressed nickel price environment, we're still generating a very healthy profit at Eagle. We should do around 50 million in free cash flow this year, and similar numbers next year. Once we get into 2027 and 2028, we'll see grades and production coming off quite significantly. However, we have key infrastructure in the Michigan area that hosts the Eagle mine and the Humboldt processing facility. Given also what we're seeing in the United States with, really a strong drive towards onshoring kind of domestic production for, all critical minerals, base metals, precious metals, we want to see if we can continue to support that initiative. And so we see Eagle as a mine with a team and an asset that we're doing whatever we can to sustain production, even if it might be at lower levels. If we can keep the Humboldt mill running, then we would very much entertain that. So one initiative that we've looked at is with this exploration package that Talon has very close to where the Humboldt mill is, called Boulder Dash. We drilled the first campaign. So as you mentioned, 30,000 meters. The first campaign was 10,000 meters. We found some interesting intercepts. We looked and found what we're chasing is massive sulfides, which contains the higher grade nickel and copper mineralization. And unfortunately, we didn't find a significant amount of massive sulfides. And so what we did with that money that we put into the drilling program is we equitized those dollars into Talon shares. And so Lundin Mining has a small equity holding in Talon. We have a very good relationship with the management team there and following what they're doing in the neighboring state in Minnesota. And we're continuing to look at opportunities either at Boulder Dash with Talon or in that Upper Peninsula region so that we can keep our presence in the United States. So I would say stay tuned for that. We've got a number of initiatives that we're driving forward. The future of Lundin Mining is very much in South America, but we're also looking at how to keep this investment alive in the United States.
Okay. Well, so I guess with that, maybe it makes sense to turn to South America and to turn to Vicuna. And I guess maybe we can start sort of big picture. The Lundins are one of the few groups who have been in and out of Argentina. successfully a couple of times. I actually can't try to think of someone else who had managed to build assets and then exit them and bring the money with them. And I couldn't come up with anyone else. But so you guys have a long history with Argentina. You're obviously spending a lot of time down there. How do you, is this time different with Malay? Do you get a sense that Argentina is turning a page on some of its political chaos of the past? And how are you guys thinking about the political situation in Argentina for the long term?
Yeah, so historically, the Lundin group of companies, which was kind of started by the visionary in our family, that my grandfather in the early 1970s, we were focused mainly on oil and gas exploration. Over time, when my father and my uncle got introduced into the business when they were in their early 20s, they started to see some success on the oil and gas side, and then my grandfather started to make investments on the mining side, and my dad got involved in working mainly more on the mining side, and my uncle kind of stayed working on the oil and gas side. And so that's how we started to diversify as a group our investments across the resource sector. And it was in the early 90s through a company that my family had small equity ownership in called International Musto, that my dad then became CEO of, and he made with that vehicle an investment into the Bajo de Alumbrera project in Argentina, in the Catamarca province. That was during the Menem administration. He was able to go in and really prove up the Bajo de Alumbrera copper porphyry, and eventually ended up selling that investment, but keeping that team intact in Argentina. Made a lot of good contacts. There's a lot of brilliant geologists, engineers, and explorationists in Argentina. And so through that success, we then moved that team and created a company called Argentina Gold, which then discovered the Valadero Gold project, which is now operated by Barrick. That subsequently was sold as well in the 90s, and we kept a large portion of that team intact, and we were able to stake the ground in the area that is now called the Vicuna district. And now we've made, across the different Lundin Group exploration vehicles that have been there, 5 significant discoveries. And now with the partnership with BHP and Lundin Mining, we are looking at, finally going into, hopefully an investment decision to go into construction and ultimately start operating from this district. So over 30 years of being invested in Argentina through different vehicles, and we've never left. We've always kind of reinvented ourselves and always looked to kind of extract as much value and create as much value for all stakeholders while we've been in Argentina. Now, this is at a scale that we've never seen before. It's very exciting to be a part of the Vicuna Corp team and continue to see Lundin Group companies making significant exploration discoveries in that area. And Argentina today, I mean, given that we've been there for 30 years, we know the history very well. And we've seen a real window of opportunity opening up today with Javier Milei coming into office in December 2023. And then having a successful result at midterm elections a couple months ago, and creating this framework for investment through this large-scale investment regime called the RIGI regime, which allows companies like ours to make an investment and sign up and adhere to a fiscal stability framework that really outlines clearly how the investment is going to be taxed, how the framework is going to be set, how long the tenure for that fiscal stability is going to last. And so to summarize, I think we see Argentina as a great place where there's been a lot of value created for the Lundin Group, and now we see a very unique window of opportunity that we're looking at kind of doubling down, and rather than proving up an asset to sell, we're now proving up an asset to develop and ultimately operate, which I think is kind of the next step of growth for the Lundin Group in Argentina.
And I mean, in regards to the large investment incentive regime, I guess there's sort of two questions that always come to my mind. One, I mean, the obvious one is, I guess, applications, if you will, are due middle of next year. You guys have got the integrated Vicuna plan coming out, I think, hopefully first quarter of next year, maybe. How are you guys feeling about hitting the timelines to participate in the program?
Yeah, I think, we're right now, we've got a baseline schedule for Vicuna Corp that we've aligned on with the Vicuna Corp project team and our partners in BHP. Recall that, as I mentioned, on January 15th, we closed the transaction with BHP, whereby Lundin Mining and BHP jointly acquired Filo Corp, and Lundin Mining vended in our Jose Maria project, which is about 10 kilometers away from the Filo del Sol deposit. So today, Vicuna Corp comprises of two deposits, Jose Maria and Filo del Sol, where we're going to be looking at developing these assets in sequence, so in a phased development plan. In May of this year, we came out with the maiden resource on Filo del Sol and an updated resource on Jose Maria, which outlined this project as one of the biggest discoveries for a copper gold silver deposit in the last 30 years. And now we've been working towards bringing these deposits together in a integrated technical report, which will outline the development plan and the operating plan, production, CapEx schedule, and all of that. And that's scheduled to be published in Q1 of this year. In July of 2026, the window closes to apply for fiscal stability, and so ahead of that, we're on track to submit an application for fiscal stability under the RIGI framework. And so I feel very confident that the timeline that we're on, the partnership that we have, and the project that we're looking at developing, will fit well within this incentive regime that Milei has put forward. And I think what you'll find is there's been a lot of applications that have gone into the government. It clearly is incentivizing companies to look at advancing projects, but there isn't a project of this size that's as advanced as ours is. And so we very much look forward to kind of showing to the market when we're ready, kind of how we're going to be building and ultimately developing. And we think that we have a real opportunity to be the first out of the gate when it comes to kicking off development and ultimately getting into operations. Argentina is, on this Andean corridor where the largest copper mines are being produced from today in Peru and in Chile. There's no copper production today in Argentina. And so I think, this is going to kickstart a boom period for Argentina in terms of base metal production. And we're very excited to be a part of that.
How critical do you think it is to be sort of the first out of the gate? I mean, that Argentina has no copper production right now. They've got some other mines going. Chile, they have plenty of copper production. The labor with experience building copper mines, et cetera, is in Chile. How important is it to be first out of the gate in order to lock down the labor you guys need to build Vicuna?
I think that, it's important for us to move on a timeline that we believe is achievable. So we're not going to be cutting any corners. We've been studying Jose Maria in Lundin Mining since 2022 when we acquired the mine, and we've been exploring and following Filo del Sol for many years. And we see that, Jose Maria is very well advanced and nearly ready to have a, investment decision made behind that. And so for us, we follow the timeline that we're comfortable on, and just knowing how much work it takes to sufficiently de-risk a project before going into sanction. I think when we just look across our group of peers, I can comfortably say that phase one of Vicuna is the most advanced project and the one that's ready to go. And so I think it's important that the first project that gets kicked off in Argentina is a success, to show that, the investment and this framework to attract investment was a good decision, because it's going to bring jobs, it's going to bring lots of investment, but you also want to do it the right way so that you can kind of set the bar for how the standard of mining needs to be ran in Argentina. So I think that that's a key motivator, but I also think, like you said, being able to attract the right talent. This is a human resource dependent sector. We, across the Lundin group, I think employ about 15,000 contractors and full-time employees. And with Vicuna, we're going to be, having thousands of people working at the job site, and then the indirect impact in terms of job creation is going to be in the tens of thousands. And so we want to make sure that we can attract the best talent and the competent labor to build out the team. And going first gives you that ability. So that is also another incentive for sure.
And so when you look at the project now, and I guess we're going to get the estimate of what it'll cost in a couple of months here, but just across the border, you had Teck and their QB project. Now, I think it was, I looked this morning and I couldn't quite find it, but I think the first press release said that's going to cost us 4.7 billion. I tried to find, what the final tally was this year. I think it's more like 8 to 9 billion. So they ran over their budget a little bit. Not exactly the same project, but high Andes, et cetera, et cetera. What lessons learned are there? What are you telling investors to give them comfort that we're not gonna see a repeat of that? And I mean, obviously, you have a great partner in BHP who has big, large scale project experience. You guys have experience building mines, maybe not at this scale though. So what are the lessons learned from QB, if any? What are you doing to try and avoid sort of the curse of the mega project, if you will?
Yeah, I think looking across our sector at recent builds, ones that have gone successful and ones that have not been successful, that's free learning for us to take. And so we have a very robust kind of benchmarking program that we look at, trying to take learnings from our peers and seeing, what went well and what didn't go well in certain development projects. We've got a lot of institutional knowledge that we bring to Lundin Mining and to Vicuna Corp, because in 2023, we acquired the Caserones mine, which is 40 kilometers away from Vicuna Corp. And we're still partners with JX Nippon. They own 30%. And those are our partners that, went in and developed a high altitude leaching circuit and then sulfide operation. So producing cathodes and copper concentrate. And there was a significant amount of challenges that were encountered during that development. All of which, we've got a full kind of download and case study to understand what the challenges were there. And I think key themes that we're finding when projects don't go so well is a lot to do with making sure that the planning cycle is, effectively executed on all stages. So don't just jump to engineering before you haven't done, proper geotechnical or geoscience analysis. Making sure that, for a project of this scale, you need to have contractors and consultants and, big firms supporting with different packages of work. And so it's very critical that we have an owner team capable of reviewing and managing and working with these contractors that are going to be supporting us. And so it's a lot of work that goes into ensuring a very robust plan. And on top of that, there's a lot of unforeseen risks that we'll be facing when we go into project phase, and just making sure that we have the, security, the personnel, and the contingency in our budgets to manage those unforeseen risks. And so with proper planning, with the right amount of engineering, and being realistic on kind of how we're reviewing different packages of work, you can mitigate around 95% of the issues that you can encounter. And for that other 5%, that's where you build in contingency and make sure you have a team that's thoughtful, can act with agility, and can be empowered to kind of make decisions to mitigate around unforeseen challenges. So I feel very confident that, given Jose Maria has been studied for so long, we've had a feasibility study in 2020 that came out. We've been refining that further and further. We've got time to really mature our understanding of Filo. We're going to build this in a sequential phased plan with the right team and the right amount of work before going into sanction.
And with that, so, you guys are partnered with BHP on this, and Vicuna, I guess it's Vicuna Corp now, 50/50. So when I first saw that, I thought it was really interesting, because I don't feel like I often see a lot of joint ventures that end up being 50/50. What processes or, what's in place, if you will, for the, in some regards, probably inevitable situation where you, Lundin's, and BHP come to some decision, and you guys are on the opposite side of it. And hopefully it hasn't happened. Hopefully it doesn't happen. But how are you guys approaching that? How do you think about that? And how should investors think about that?
Well, I think that the success that we've been able to achieve to date, and the success that we'll continue to achieve in the future, is based on having a very strong and open and transparent relationship with our partners. And so I think it's important for the audience to know that Lundin Mining's first investment into the Vicuna district was done in 2022 when we acquired Jose Maria. BHP's first investment was in 2022 when they invested into Filo del Sol at the asset level. And so we were able to kind of enter the district at the same time and really get to know each other through advancing the respective projects and really aligning through a lot of collaborative discussions on how we believe this district needs to be built out on the Argentinian side. And so it was several years of gaining that alignment and building confidence in the relationship and getting comfortable with each other, that we then were able to announce in July of last year that we were going to be forming this partnership and creating ultimately Vicuna Corp. And then this year has been a very important year for us to set out that business process and the cadence of board meetings, the insurance that we have, and the governance protocols that we put in place, and really growing our relationship further through actually now being partners. And so having a 50/50 JV gives us the ability to really focus on providing and inputting complementary skill sets from Lundin Mining side and BHP side into Vicuna Corp, and working with a set of guiding principles that we are focused on doing what's best for the joint venture. If we can anchor back to that, we're going to have healthy discussions and disagreements, and we're going to work through those, and we'll get stronger from them each time there is a difference of opinion. But anchoring back to having the right people in Vicuna Corp, having a competent set of managers that are understanding how to move the project forward, and moving forward with the philosophy that we got to do what's best for the joint venture, I think will ultimately result in the continued and sustained success that we've been having there.
Okay, gotcha. And so just looking at the project a little bit, one of the things that always struck me that was quite interesting was how close all your assets are in the grand scheme of things. And obviously there's been discussion about synergies. Synergies are always pretty tough with mining firms.
Yes.
So when you guys look at the project, and I guess when Vicuna Corp looks at the Vicuna project and then looks at the assets you guys have got in the area, what are some of the realistic synergies that you guys are thinking about?
So I think, first and foremost, when you look at Jose Maria and Filo del Sol together, sharing infrastructure, whether it be, processing, material processing infrastructure, or, camp, or warehouses, maintenance facilities, all of that, like building this out in a way where phase one comes online, and then we can size up phase one infrastructure to then take in, ultimately Filo del Sol, or which is what we consider to be kind of the crown jewel of the district. So hosting the infrastructure together and optimizing that infrastructure as we grow is what's going to, really help in terms of providing, the best economic benefits while minimizing the overall environmental footprint. But then when you look off-site and you look at the off-site infrastructure component as well, Lundin Mining, through our two operations on the other side of the border in Chile, so Caserones, which I mentioned, is also, by the way, in the Vicuna district, but on the northwestern Chilean side of the district. And then as you work your way down the Andes towards the Pacific coast, you stop at Candelaria, which is about 150 kilometers away. And then another 100 kilometers away is our port and desalination facility at Punta Pedrones. And so this infrastructure coming together, I think, really could support bringing scale to the district. We want to make sure that we build out infrastructure on both sides, so both in Chile and in Argentina. But seeing that we've got kind of a network of assets, we've got a port, we've got a desalination facility, I think all of that plays a key role in future expansions of the overall Vicuna project. Now, the focus for us is getting into operations through phase one, and phase one being Jose Maria. We'll look at conventional kind of large scale open pit truck and shovel operation that we will be trucking the concentrate once it's produced, either through Argentina or Chile. And then when we want to get to full scale, that's when you bring that network of offsite infrastructure together. But for us, it's starting, I would say, smaller, more simplistic, and then growing as we start to prove the concept.
Okay. It seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, oftentimes when I look at projects that say Glencore or BHP do, they oftentimes seem to, want to roll out a gold-plated sort of mine from day one that's sort of everything. You guys are pushing a more of a staged build out. Has that created any tension with BHP? I mean, you're still doing, the goal obviously is still best in class. But it is a bit of a different strategy for them. Any tension there?
No, again, I think based on kind of the discussions that we've been having for the past several years and understanding that, even phase one, I say it's kind of smaller and more simple. It's still going to be very large scale and require a lot of upfront capital. And so I think, one key, characteristic of this joint venture is being pragmatic in the approach that we're taking. We all want to operate this district with the best standards possible. We want to set the bar and show how responsible mining can be done on the Argentinian side of this Andean corridor, where there's so much opportunity. And so I think if we can be pragmatic, and if we can build something that has those high standards but isn't overcapitalized to start with, then once you start cash flowing, we can look at really seeing how what other optimizations we need to be doing. But what I would say is phase one is going to have the best equipment, the best infrastructure, the best team in place to ensure that it's not just getting into operations, but it's sustaining operations. It's using those cash flows to continue to expand. And ultimately, the goal is to be producing at full scale, which incorporates Jose Maria and Filo together. We don't anticipate just building Jose Maria and then stopping. It's a stepping stone to creating what should be a top 10, if not top 5 copper, gold, silver mining operation globally. Like, that's the scale that we're looking at going after. And so we have to be pragmatic, we have to be methodical, and we have to be realistic about when and how we can achieve those steps to get to that scale.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I've got one last question, and then we can sort of wrap it up, I think, and I appreciate you being so generous with your time. But so the Lundin name is well known in mining. You guys have major shift into copper here, so you've got to have every copper project of any kind being sent across your desk. How are you guys? And obviously, Vicuna is priority one. But you've done a lot of M&A, and you guys have been successful at it. And you've done both sides of the M&A the equation. So how are you prioritizing capital allocation? How are you thinking about some of these new opportunities that are coming across your desk? Everyone probably wants to work with you guys. So how are you managing that?
Well, it's been a busy few years. So in 2022, we paid $500 million US, so they're about just under, for acquiring 100% of Jose Maria. In 2023, we bought 51% of Caserones for an asset value of around 1.8 billion. And then in 2024, we increased our ownership into Caserones to 70%. And we announced this JV with BHP, where we created Vicuna Corp and received an upfront payment for 50% of Jose Maria, and then our portion of 50% of Filo. Then the last kind of key transaction for us was selling our European assets for $1.4 billion US to Boliden. So I think people understand that we're opportunistic and we're ready to transact when it makes sense for the business. But I think all of those transactions were key to building this profile that we have, with a great strategy of growth from our existing operations, which we haven't gotten into on this call today, but we have incremental low capital intensity growth opportunities at our 3 Latin American sites. We have this extremely exciting growth opportunity to essentially double our production with Vicuna Corp. And we have a strong balance sheet. We continue to return cash to shareholders through buybacks and dividends. So every year around $220 million US goes back to shareholders in the form of buybacks and dividends. And so we've got a robust financial framework. We've got an optimized portfolio. We've got great growth opportunities. But if something comes our way that makes sense for our portfolio, then we will entertain it. And we just got to be, I think a key word for us is opportunistic and again, pragmatic. So we don't need to do anything today. It's a great position to be in. But if an opportunity comes our way that makes sense, then we would very much look at pursuing that.
Okay, well, that sounds great. I mean, I think the opportunistic and I don't know, willing to go and do things that other people dismiss out of hand has always seemed to me one of the positive traits of you, your brothers, your father, grandfather, etc. So thrilled to hear that'll continue. Again, really appreciate the time, and look forward to watching you guys build Vicuna and continue to build Lundin Mining into a world's great copper miners.
Thank you, Will. Really appreciate the research report that you put out and the opportunity to speak to you on this platform, and looking forward to doing it again in the near future.
Sounds good. Great. Thanks, Jack.